Completely relax.
So I like the sound of I am completely relaxed because that's the zone in which we want to get people onto this. But family, I keep saying welcome to Future Readiness with Zara, and each time I promise you a fantastic human being. And I know I've been consistent because each time, given your comments and your feedback, we know that we're bringing fantastic human beings that you may have heard about, and you wondered, how am I going to get hold of that person? So today you're in for another treat because it's the one and only Monde Twala. So Monde, you and I know each other peripherally from the industry, and then we were in the same space because of your current employ, and then we were weeping together at the passing of people we love and care about. But besides all those peripheral things, how does Monde Twala introduce himself?
Yo. Monde Twala. Wow. He's Monde's a simpleton, simple young gleaner from Edube, Soweto. Although I regard myself a global citizen, I've been very fortunate to be able to touch different parts of the world and be influenced by many, many, many people. I'm really a true example of it takes a village. It does take a village to kind of curate my mind, body, soul. It takes a village to kind of influence who Monde Twala is and where he comes from, methods, more than anything, to be honest, because I'm led. I'm someone who's led. As much as people think that, people put you in these leadership positions that give you these titles and they call me a leader and a boss, whatever, super creative, whatever association that might. And I'm just a simple guy, just trying to play my part in this beautiful and amazing spectrum of a rainbow nation and in this bigger ecosystem of this beautiful world we live in.
You were talking ever so richly about your introduction, and I wanted to just lean into this conversation about who are the people in this village that you credit for how you have turned out. Because often when I speak to people, I say all the good parts are from my mom, all the bad parts are my own fault.
Uh, Listen, I come from a very dynamic, a huge family. Tina Abantu, but Abantu basemzansi.
Yeah.
I come from a very big family. Originally, made up of like a Swati influence, a Xhosa influence. But I think my biggest influence from a family perspective is my mother's family. Which also comes with a bit of a, a, a media dynasty to it in a way, because a lot of us come from, a lot of us are kind of in the media space in different capacities. So I think even from my grandmother and my grandfather being my biggest influence, to be honest. My grandfather was an activist. He was an editor. He was in sport and business. He was quite a bit of a dynamic guy. And I think growing up in Dube and especially in Soweto, we had a great privilege of then different people from different walks of life, particularly in a middle class Soweto family over the 80s, the 90s, really growing up, seeing, different people like Bo Felicia, the Tokyo Sitwales of the world, um, the Dr. Givus of the world, like really influenced by just what was a very bubbling, intellectual, middle class influence back 80s, 90s. but very much anchored by more simple values from ugogo nomkhulu, and obviously community. So growing up in Soweto, in that time, it was very much community around you. So you walk in the street, you see a malume who says, "Hey, run to the shop." You run to the shop because you are taught, you are taught respect, you are taught good values. You then apply them, going forward in terms of, going into business, building my own family, and just building connections globally. I guess I apply those same principles, I guess. And
That is so rich. I was actually just thinking about how growing up, everyone's mother was your mother, everyone's father was your father. If they saw you misbehaving, they'd give you a quick clap and you would be set right. So there was this idea of boundaries, that you can't tell me anything, is something that we're learning in the new generation.
it's
But I'm
so
also,
new.
I
It's so
know, and
new.
like you couldn't even hold a boy's hand if you knew Monde's dad was going to be walking down that street, because you knew you'd get in trouble for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I work with a lot of young people now, and I see, the Gen Zs, they've got their own ways of doing things, and you can't tell them much now because they've got access to so much more than we had. But I think values are values, So I still apply the same values to my kids who, within their, they're all young, they're still very young and exploring life and learning. But I think that the passion for people that is anchored around respect, and the idea that, when you respect people, you also have to listen. I think it's the power of listening. When I was younger, I know everyone thinks me a papa, Mike, but I'm papi. It's just the idea that when I was young, I was very quiet. I kept to myself most of the time. Not a lot of people know that my nickname is actually Umaztule. My nickname Umaztule. I'm the direct opposite of that today. But when I was growing up, I was quiet. I kept to myself. I was a sponge, and I had this influence of this Dube community that had, intellectuals, sports people, musicians, media people, just professors, doctors. And I used to hang around my grandmother and my grandfather a lot. And growing up in that space, I had to listen to it. So I was a sponge. I took in conversations. I took in debates. I used to sit with my grandfather and just sit in a corner and listen to him do his business. We were taught to read a lot. So all of us, Akai, were taught to read, which, is really that reading exposes your imagination to what is possible, and you're also able to hold your own. Words come out easier when you read, and growing up being a very quiet Twala boy, I had to listen a lot, and I still apply the same principles in my leadership style, in my industry collaborations, partnerships. Listen first, take it in, then you are able to then, kind of start building a strategy or a partnership or really structure things a little bit. And I think that comes from that community that I come from. I was taught, listen first, read the room before you make your move. And I think that's been a great empowerment in terms of just my upbringing and how it's influenced me today.
Isn't that amazing? Because my mom always says you've got one mouth and two ears for a reason. But of course, when she was saying this, she was upset. So it didn't land as wisdom, it landed as correction. But much later, you actually realize that there's a strength in just listening first, before you speak. But you're sitting very far from Dube now, because how does that quiet sponge of a boy get from Dube to the top of Paramount today? What was that journey, and what were your highlights?
Wow. It's been, it's been a great journey. So I mean, I started off. I mean, I obviously had this fascination for storytelling, this fascination for creativity. I think very early, I picked up just the power of entertainment, media, storytelling, the power of this beautiful medium called broadcasting and entertainment very early in life. Really inspired. I think I was about probably between the age of 8 and 10. I used to go to a theater called Ayetu, which was in Fremont. Yeah, Edu. And then we used to go watch these on a Saturday morning. You know, we used to go watch these Chinese movies, karate movies, were dubbed.
Where the staring never dies. The staring never dies.
Yeah, the staring, the staring when yeah. So I think that we used to literally that's all we had apart from playing sport and soccer in the streets. And that, I used to be fascinated with cinema then. And kind of had this edge of like one day I want to create, I want to tell stories and create and fast track. Many years ago, many years later, I find myself working at the SABC.
Monde, you know what? I'm fascinated because when I reflect on my own journey and how I got into advertising, I went to school to study the social sciences. And I, through sociology, came across the writings of Bell Hooks, was sensitized to feminism, but more importantly to the power of representation and how pictures aren't neutral, that pictures can cause harm to a latchkey kid who goes home and has these ads that are showing people who could be her mother's age in roles that are not reflective of what is her lived reality. So I'm fascinated by how you are able to almost create this arc between your fascination with storytelling, understanding the power of cinema, and maybe the question is, do you feel a responsibility then for what you put out on your channels, understanding that images are not neutral and that they can be powerful?
Wow, no, absolutely. I think we have to be responsible about how and what we project and using the medium and using media and using entertainment, and how we anchor storytelling around responsible storytelling. Audiences, I think, over the years, I've always seen through, obviously we do a lot of research around this, and we engage audiences all the time, particularly young people, about what do they want to see. They want to see more of themselves. I've just come back from the Cannes Lions. Globally, it's a big representation is a huge thing across all the key markets that we operate through, or I operate through. I'm seeing that more and more as a responsibility on not only telling stories that reflect, the people we served and the communities we serve, but also being very intentional about representation, being whether it's gender, whether it's race, minority, majority, like how we make sure that we continue to align to a lived experience. More and more markets and consumers out there are telling that to us through market research, that they want to reflect themselves, but they also want to tell their lived stories. So that young male, female who's gone through an experience wants to also see that reflected in storytelling. Even if you look at genres, like look at the genre of reality, if you remember, reality shows were kind of your adventure shows. So formats like Survivor, Gladiator, those were like, that used to be formatted reality. but then it quickly evolved into celeb reality. Then celeb reality became about the story behind star power. So people were fascinated with superstars and what are they doing at home? The whole Kardashian kind of feel to now user generated reality is now a thing. So now the subculture groups are now popping up in different platforms. The more platforms there are, the more subculture niche groups that we are starting to see who want very specific reality. Trans kind of community wants to see themselves and their journey, their experience through life in their own filter. That requires us then to be very responsible about how we project cross-gender content, how we project cross-racial, cross-market, and then there's formats in the content space like music. Look at Afrobeat, look at Amapiano. They're able to now transcend border, and that's a form of storytelling, by the way. It's just that the genre is music, but it's reflecting a certain African culture, attitude, pop culture, youth culture, and today young people are aspiring for global success. So how does then Africa now start to represent itself? If you think of the old days, how news platforms used to project Africa were, it used to be this picture of the poor African child, who's hungry, but there's a new Africa, there's a confident Africa, there's an affluent Africa, there's an aspirational Africa, there's a successful Africa today that we are now, and through I think through, pop culture and what we see today, and this multi-platform, multi-territory mindset, and that's enabling us to tell our stories. It's a great leverage, but it comes with the responsibility for us to be authentic and true to a lived experience. That showcases our potential as Africans, and showcases our diversity. I tell people all the time, especially my international colleagues, that I grew up in a country that is so diverse. Diversity is in our DNA. We are called the Rainbow Nation purely because you get everybody on this continent. In this country, you get everybody in South Africa, and it's amazing when we start leaning in on diversity as a superpower. That's the magic. I just love actually, making those kind of references when I'm interacting in kind of the global arena about just showcasing the power of how as Africans we continue to leverage our diversity to tell stories, entertain, and also educate. Using edutainment as a format, and I think that's a power that we need to extend and lean more on, and that's what makes us special. That's our magic.
And I'm not in any way disagreeing with you, but I'm going to push back a little, because part of what I love is this idea that we have a confident and affluent and an aware Africa. Like, so the African child is very aware of who she is. She enters a boardroom very, very solid in the fact that she is there and she's supposed to be there and she's going to do something amazing while she's in that room. If that is true, Monde, why is it that there are still elements where it feels like we are emulating the global north as opposed to unearthing what is truly unique to us? Do you know what I mean? Like, and why are we still surviving when you have people who can come onto this continent for 2 seconds, go to Namibia, go to Nigeria, have some choreographer help them with some Amapiano moves, and before you know it, what is ours has been reappropriated. Not only the talent, but also the riches that flow from that talent. So how do we balance that?
I think it's a fine balance. We need resources, So I think the resource base is a key thing. We need more investment in, particularly, I think the way I think we look at the creative economy as a society and as a continent is important. The creative economy. If you think about it this way, Africa is is probably is dubbed to have the biggest youth population in the world. African storytelling is at its virgin phase. We haven't even started scratching the surface in terms of how we can leverage the idea of, why we're not telling our own stories. I was watching Woman King the other day. Black Panther became like a big thing, where African design, this whole conversation of Afrofuturism was like a buzzword a couple of years ago. And I think we need to move from that. We need to move from that place where we think that maybe the West is going to enable us. Yes, the resources, we need resources. We need to professionalize our space, but we also need to actually win at home. So I tell a lot of creatives, like, create a market at home, win before you even start thinking of taking on the global space. Win at home first. Mathosa, for example, on the fashion side, he curated a brand for himself at home. He established a USP. Took him a while, but he managed to get the resource to then help him then now today launch in New York. I was with him a month ago. He launched his shop in New York, and even then, his success is winning at home, because he's captured his market, defined his brand, established his USP to now get it to then walk. Same as content, content that travels. Black culture is everywhere, but the cradle of Black culture remains Africa. So African Americans want to connect with the continent. The continent wants to connect with African Americans. There's a model in between there. What we need to now start having is creating those platforms and forums that enable that. All of this requires resource. So it requires more investment in the creative sector. You look at Nollywood. How Nollywood has just, everyone used to say, oh, Nollywood, the quality, complain about quality, but the storytelling was a signature. But why are we thinking Nollywood is popular on the continent? Why do we think that our approach to storytelling through a Nollywood format is less of? So it's not. It's our format. If it comes with its own hiccups, we will refine and clean it. But the fact that we are now creating Africanized IP for a global audience is something that I think is going to be important going forward. It takes us back to resources. How do we get more resources in the market? And I think that young Black girl needs to be enabled. We need to find ways where we can, and that's why part of a lot of work that I do it in that collaboration partnership space. I think gone are the days where broadcasters will just commission nonstop. It's there now needs to be that shared risks, shared IP, shared revenue approach in everything we do. So we try and bring those models in now in terms of how we collaborate with talent on the continent. We did that well in Nigeria. We've done that well in South Africa, and now trying to roll it out in many other parts of the continent, in terms of just like how do we find a way of creating new models that resource this African creative culture economy.
And also, and I think in addition to resources, also the legislation, right? Like, you need a government that is truly aware of the contribution that the creative economy makes. Because for as long as people, I think, because in the same way that you would imagine that a basket is craft, but if it's done by somebody else and it's called design, right? this is the same territory. This is the same conversation you and I are having, which is just because just because it's done by someone else, then it sounds refined. No, 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 no. At its core, at its most organic, at its most native, it is unrefined because it is true. The minute you start buffing the edges, then you're packaging it, and that's a totally different thing. So yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
I was at a conference recently in Durban, and they were making an example around Umam Esther Masamo and her success, her design. Her design is actually like it's science, it's scientific,
It's
it's
mathematical. That
mathematical,
stuff is deep.
it's mathematical.
Yes.
It's not,
Yes.
and it shows you then the value that we can't then say, oh, it's African, it's craft. No, that is world class mathematical, scientific design that also looks unique. It looks beautiful, and it's different to what you will see, on in Paris on the ramp or anything else. So I think that's, we just need to make sure we build confidence in our own ability to tell our stories through different mediums and forums, and showcasing. Make sure that we showcase it. Culture is culture. It lives through fashion. It lives through television, radio, podcasts. Right now, I'm in podcasts. I did a partnership on the BT Awards with Podcasts and Chill. The numbers that they managed to contribute towards exposing the BT Awards this year were like double what I got year on year. But it just also shows you that new media is affording us this great opportunity to actually just explore new formats, um, that open up new markets, and that's the advantage that tech bring. AI is amazing. My 18-year-old just got me hooked on WhatsApp AI. You know, it's amazing. Something that usually would take me 2 hours to research is now taking me a click. It's a click away, you know? Now, a lot of people are frightened. Oh no, people are going to lose job. No, guys, you know, it's just how do we drive efficiencies? Businesses, as a business, we and as human beings, we need to find quicker, better ways to solve the problem, because we got lots of problems to solve. We got lots of problems to solve. And when we solve problems, we're not solving individual problems. We're solving collective problems.
It is societal scale. It is societal
Yeah,
scale.
we just have to lean in. We just have to lean in. And I see this kind of burst in the tech space as a huge opportunity for young Africans to start their own businesses, to be entrepreneurial, to use technology to kind of cut the long walk to freedom, make it shorter. And that's
Monday, you've got to be careful though, because we can't just say make it short and then you don't learn the basics. I think, yes, expedite the process, but you
yeah.
have to learn the basics.
No. You still have to do the right things and have a
Yes, like
process.
if you're a fashion if you're a fashion designer, the buttonholes must still be done right.
Yeah,
Sheldon
quality.
of Nature
What?
Ape will tell you, he's like, so if I see one more buttonhole that's not done well because it's supposed to be an African show, he wants to lose his mind.
No, I think, and I think that's it's what it's excellence. How do we build excellence into all these kind of initiatives that we're driving, so that it's more about quality, less about quantity. And I think that's the opportunity. But I'm excited about what the future looks like, for the next generation that's coming, to kind of come into these spaces, and they're the ones who are going to actually take it forward, break new borders, break new markets. Because I think, especially as South Africans, we leave a lot on the table. I've worked in Ghana, I've worked in Nigeria. I see how robust, those communities are. I still feel like as South Africans, we leave a lot on the table. We're very essay-centric in our approach. We produce for now and not necessarily produce for markets. Why we're not selling our IP and selling our creativity, our design outside, outside our borders. And I think the new generation is looking for that. And they're fortunate because I think the platforms are there now. The platforms are there to enable them to just dream, and then, and then press
And
click.
then stay the course. And then stay the course. Like dream and stay the course. Yeah. Dream and stay the course. You've spoken, this Africanized IP thing is actually making me think about how another bit of work that continues to behold those leaders who are sitting in positions like you is to continue to agitate for knowledge creation and knowledge capture. That Africans can't just be knowledge consumers. Reversing what the world thinks of us means that we too must contribute more than we consume. And at the moment, I think sometimes the scale is in favor of consumption and not so much in creation. So I'm excited about the partnerships you're speaking to, and I'm also excited about how you're deliberate in just saying content transmits culture. That comes with a huge responsibility. So how we dispense of that remit is going to be a reflection not just on the communities we serve, but on the continent from which we come, which is a big, big responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. So I could keep you here for hours, but of course I can't because.
And I think it's one step at a time, one day at a time. I think the journey is I think the train has left the station, for sure. But I think we need to kind of peel this thing, one at a time, one step at a time, and work towards creating that sustainability. You just look at Makadzi now. Recently came back with the BT Awards. Who would have thought? This is like a rural young lady who's just got a talent, but now has been enabled to actually expand her brand, her culture to new audiences, new markets, and imagine if we replicate that mindset in different the different entertainment formats, and really lean in on this power and ability to shift and create value. When I say value, I talk about economic value. Where now she used to be booked in South Africa. Now she can be booked in Nigeria. Now she can be booked in Uganda. She can be booked in LA, in New York, in London, because of just exposure, and leveraging kind of this new world we're in, and multimedia, and the idea that multimedia, multi-territory formats, storytelling that can resonate beyond. There's a movie that was shot in Durban called The Wesleys. It's an African American movie. It's an African American movie. It's got half of the cast is South African, half of the cast is African American. It's premiering this December on BT Plus in the US. And now we're looking to replicate that model. This was kind of a case study. It's done well. Now we want to replicate that model. Now you're creating a value chain for talent to be showcased, across each market. If you recall, previously you had like titles like the Mandela Story, and they had, the lead had to be an African American for it to travel, but that narrative is changing, because we now have to kind of lobby and structure storytelling from originated from an African perspective for the world, and if it's part of then what you said earlier, let's create and win at home, so that we then are able to then create this pipeline going forward that can then stories that we can replicate in other markets, or showcase in other markets, and bring back that value. And one day at a time, we grow, and then start, the economy starts making sense. The investment starts making sense. That's kind of what keeps me up at night every day. It's just about how we can create sustainability in the model, from telling stories that are for the world, but from our perspective, and are told by us. Let's not wait for someone else to tell us stories. And also, I think the young market is demanding more and more of that. They want to see themselves, but they also want to see themselves in the global, as part of a global arena, and not just an African arena.
Like the slide, the door, the room at the bottom is for the Africans, and then the main arena is for the other people.
Yeah.
And the Africans are going, no, make the circle bigger.
Make the circle bigger. We want to be part. We want to be in every board. We want to be in every room, and we want to be heard. We want to be seen, and we want to be inspired, by our own. Before we are inspired by someone else, we want to be inspired by our own, and then obviously in the impact side, there's also kind of a lot of work we still have to do on the impact side, whether it's, I'm busy now with a mental health documentary that's looking at just like how mental health is impacting young Africans, but I'm not looking for experts to tell me. I'm looking for young people to express themselves in terms of just what are those triggers that are and challenges that are just impacting them today. We are lucky, by the way. So I think we're lucky. We grew up at a time where the struggle was a collective struggle. It's changed now. It's very individualistic based right now, and every individual now wants to have a unique voice, and it's interesting to see. I mean, we just finished the elections now. Interesting to see like the flip, how just our political landscape has just flipped, because people want to be seen and heard, and they want solutions. And the beauty about where we are is, I think, you look at Kenya. There was the riots in Kenya. As unfortunate as it was, because we lost a lot of lives, but it was the collective voice that changed legislation in 48 hours. And there's a beauty about this level of activism and engagement from the young communities around us. That for me is powerful and beautiful to see, because I think it's also taking charge of our own story.
Yeah, your own future, your own reality, your own story.
Yep.
So you've just answered my question, which was the one around what keeps you up. So I will ask you my final question, because I could keep you here for hours, but I think people in your world tell me, they're like, hey, we need his brain for something else. So tell me, if you look at everything you've experienced, all the places in which you have risen and fallen, all the lives you've touched and have been touched by, how would you answer this question? What do you like about yourself now?
Hey, so I tend to reflect less about myself. I'm learning. I'm learning to accept it. I'm learning to, but they say acceptance is the start of everything. Half the problem is solved. No, I mean, listen. I think I'm as an individual. I'm just generally very, very inspired by just staying on the clock. I'm staying on the clock. I'm staying on the beat. I learn every day. I'm loving where I am, because I have not lost my essence, the essence of that young Dube boy who's a sponge. I have not lost that essence. I sit with my elders. I sit with the youth around me, and I learn from everyone. And I think that's like a beautiful place to find my maturity. Is in my ability to just continue to learn. I'm teachable. I learn. I've made loads of mistakes, at a personal level, at a business level, but I continue to lean on the learnings that I pick up. I continue to be inspired by what's happening around me. I continue to be inspired by history. I'm actually engaged in a political leadership forum. Don't ask why. And it's challenging me because I'm looking at philosophy, looking at philosophy around human nature, looking at philosophy around politics, economics, and how the importance of structures, in our communities that then enable, advancement of either our individualism or our collective communal kind of interests. So that's once again, I'm in that learning space, which is pretty much reflective about understanding the past, understanding history, to then be able to then continue this journey of crafting a future in my space, and keeping close to what are the trends, how do we then leverage culture, what's going on, man, what's going on, and then how do we then leverage the platforms to continue to shift with culture. A big responsibility for anyone who's in the media space is really in that sphere of constantly bringing a learning mindset to everything we do, and then using that learning mindset to then craft, a way forward, scientifically and artistically. Everyone knows I'm all about the art and the science. How they work together is very intricate, but it needs knowledge, it needs collaboration, it needs people, it needs teams, and I think that's what I'm liking about myself, and where I'm finding myself today is in a very, very beautiful, reflective space that is very positive about what tomorrow looks like, and I'm just also honored to be part of, a space that then is just beyond self-interest and just is there to just improve everything around me, people around me. I sit on boards, I sit on different initiatives, foundations that I give a lot of myself. A younger me would have like, no, guys, yeah, too busy. But I'm finding more opportunity to be part of, part of some things that are just bigger than my own interest, because I just learn. I love learning. I love exposure. I like listening to people. And of course, I weave that back into storytelling.
For the benefit of everyone around you and for us, because you've granted us so much time, and also just a window into the boy from Dube who's now become this amazing human being who carries his responsibility with such care. I wish you continued clarity. So clarity just to understand what needs to be done, what you need to stop, start, and continue, and then the courage to go on that path, whatever the beckoning might be. But what a joy, what a wonderful, delighted scene. Thank you, Monde. I'll see you on the streets, as they say.
As they say. No, this was great. This was a good connect. Always good to connect with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.